Good evening. Shabbat Shalom. It is a pleasure to get to be with you in this bright and sunny Pittsburgh space. If you are with us in the Beit HaT'filah at Temple Emmanuel of South Hills, I hope it is equally sunny and beautiful wherever you may be. If you are joining us in sacred virtual community, it is a wonderful Shabbat, a wonderful opportunity to come together, not only because we get to do so in sacred community, but because as part of this evening's service, we'll be led by our terms crew, our Temple Emmanuel retirees in mitzvah service, and it is wonderful to welcome them into the leadership of our service, including, of course, a very familiar face to us in the Temple Emmanuel crew, Cantor, Rena. It is a pleasure to welcome you back, and I welcome each of you to join us on pages 10 and 11 as we begin our Shabbat evening service tonight.
So we're going to sing Meyer Hayom, which is on 10, and then we're going to go right into Ki Eshmera Shabbat, which is on 11. So it's what I call, sometimes the kids call a mashup. You know, you put two together. It's not quite that hip, but that's what it is. So please join me. Meyer Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Meyer Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Ki Eshmera Shabbat El Yishmereni. Ki Eshmera Shabbat El Yishmereni. Oti le'omei beino ve'ni. Oti le'omei beino ve'ni. Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom.
It is my pleasure to invite forward Term's fearless leader. Roger, would you join us to welcome everyone to our Shabbat service this evening?
I made it up the stairs. A few years ago, I didn't make it down the stairs so well, but here I am. You ready? Good evening. It's my honor to welcome you to the Terms Shabbat service. It seems appropriate that as the old year comes to a close, we call on the Temple Emmanuel retirees in mitzvah service, you know, the Alta Caucus, to lead tonight's service. We've been through a lot these last few years, but we are still standing strong. Our bagel brunch was extremely well received, as was our Temple Labor Day picnic. And 5783 looks even brighter, God willing. Our new Temple program and volunteer coordinator, Sarah Mangan, is a fresh start to the new year. So let us thank the Lord and rededicate ourselves, beginning with Barbara Feldman, lighting the Shabbat candles.
Thank you so much. And indeed, we turn to page 2, followed by pages 4 and 5, as we welcome Shabbat with the kindling of our Shabbat lights and with the blessings over wine and kiddush. Page 2.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As the brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'chag ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the lights of Shabbat.
Amen. Pages 4 and 5, can I invite you to rise if it's comfortable to do so?
Vayehi Erev, Vayehi Boker, Yom HaShishi. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. The heaven and the earth were finished in all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done. Please join me. Baruch
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei bria ha'gafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho Be'ahava uvratzon yichilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom tefila l'nikra'e kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim, ki banu mikol ha'amim v'shabbat koshecha ya'ava uvratzon imchaltanu baruch atah Adonai v'kadesh hashalom.
Thank you both so much. Friends, you're welcome to be seated as we turn now in our prayer books to page 13, singing, offering words of Psalm 96, a new song unto our God.
Shir l'Adonai, shir chadash, shir l'Adonai koretz, shir l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basru miyom liyom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim kevodo, b'cho ha'amim niflotav, ki gadol Adonai u'mulam egod norahu al kol Elohim, ki kol Elohei ha'amim elelim, v'Adonai shamayim asa, od v'hadar lefanav, oz v'tiferet b'mikdasho, yismechu hashamayim hashamayim, yismechu hashamayim hashamayim, yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz, v'yiram hayam, v'yiram hayam, v'yiram hayam, v'yiram hayam, v'yiram hayam, v'yiram hayam, ya'alo sadai v'chol asher bo, az yiranenu kol aseyar, lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, v'yamin b'emunato.
This afternoon, a small group of us got to continue our look at some of the traditional texts for this season, this month of Elul leading to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we looked at a prayer colloquially known as a Shamnu, or Vidui Zuta, or the short confessional, ay, 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 ay. You're familiar with it, right? It is written out as an acrostic. Aleph, Bet, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, the whole way through the alphabet, reminding us, perhaps encompassing all of the different emotions we feel in this month as we look back, as we think about those good things we did, those things we tried to do, those things that may not have worked out as we planned them, those things where maybe we didn't have the best of intentions at all. And indeed, through the use of the first letter of those words, it came to teach us that more than the words themselves, meaning could be found in the way they were laid out in the page. I'm not exactly sure it holds for the prayer on pages 20 and 21. For rather than giving us a subtle hidden meaning about what it is to be good people, the author of Lecha Dodi simply put his name on his work. The first letter of each stanza spells out the name of the author of this beautiful piyut, this beautiful poem with which we introduce Shabbat each and every week. Lecha Dodi, we welcome the Sabbath into our midst on pages 20 and 21, thinking not only of its author, but indeed the way the words are laid in the page, the way each stanza brings new meaning. And as we sing our way through this beautiful poem, this beautiful prayer, I'd invite you to take in the English meaning as well, that we prepare to embrace Shabbat not only in this room, but into our hearts as well.
Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, yishmi'anu ha'miyuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad. L'shem u'l'tifarat v'l'tehila la 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 dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'neilcha, ki mekor ha'beracha, Merosh mikeder nesucha, Sof ma'aseh v'machshavat tefila la 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 lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela. Verse 5. Itoreri, kiva orech kumi ori, uri shir daberi, kavod Adonai alayach nigla la 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 lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela. Verse 9. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'v'sola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala la 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 lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei p'nei Shabbat nekavela.
While many are already up, I invite you to take this opportunity to continue our words of greeting, to turn to the people beside you, to wish them a Shabbat Shalom as we join in sacred community tonight. When When you're ready, you might find your seat as we turn to page 24 to continue those words of welcoming Shalom Aleichem, welcoming God's ministering angels, page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vo'achem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
And on page 26, Yitgadol v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, B'almad yivrach yurtei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchayedecho Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Bagala, uvizman kariv, V'yimeru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach, le'alam ulal me'al maya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yipar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitale, v'yithalal, shemed kudusha b'rich, le'ela mincho berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, v'yimeru amen. On page 27, we continue in the English, and it is my pleasure to invite forward Will Joseph to lead us in prayer.
Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways.
Page 28, we continue with our Baruch Hu praise, and I would again invite you to rise if it's comfortable for you to do so.
Baruch Hu et Adonai, Hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamevorach, Leolam Va'ed.
Ed, would you join us to lead us on page 30?
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, אשר בדברו מעריב ערבים, וחכמה פותח שערים, ובתבונה משנה עיתים, ומחליף את חצמנים, ומסדר את חלקים, ומשפטותיהם ברקיע כזונה, בורא יום ולילה, כולל אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור, ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה. אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים.
Thank you, sir. And Nancy, would you join us to lead us in the prayer found on page 33?
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us, and the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai Elohei Amo Yisrael.
Thank you so much. Pages 34 and 35.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto
You are welcome to be seated as Mary leads us in the prayer on page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובנפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, ושבתך וביתך, ודלקתך בדרך, ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות ידיך, והיו לו טוטפות בין עיניך, וקרבתם המזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתיכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
And as we turn in our prayer books to page 39, it is my pleasure to invite Harvey Rubin forward to lead us. Page 39.
Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
On page 40, I invite Milt Wolf to join us, to lead us in our song of freedom, our praise, taken from the biblical text in Exodus 15, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, who is like you, God, who has continued to do wonders for the Jewish people.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedor bakodesh nora tehilos o seifele malchus acharo vanecha bokei ayom lefnei Moshe Miriam zeili anu v'amru Adonai yimloch Yalam voed v'nemar kifodon oish Yaakov ugolo miyad kozak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael.
Thank you. And on the bottom of the same page, Roz, would you join us to lead us in the English rendition of these words?
Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? Your children witnessed your sovereignty, the sea splitting before Moses and Miriam. This is our God, they cried. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Gal Israel.
Thank you so much. And as we turn to page 43 in our prayer books for our Hashkivenu praise, we take just a moment to recognize that many in this world are in a period of mourning for the passing of the Queen of England. If you think about the number of years that she reigned, the number of years where she was able to oversee not necessarily peace in the world, that would have been out of anyone's control, but at least a more peaceful series of years for Britain and the United Kingdom, for Canada, for Australia. We recognize her as a force for peace in this world, and we pray that King Charles III might continue that same reign, bringing peace, bringing wisdom, bringing goodness to a world so desperately in need. Alan, would you join us to lead us in this prayer?
Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you our true protection and safety, and in your presence our acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporesh sefer shalom aleinu v'al kol yamo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome. And on the following page, page 44, we give thanks in song for the covenant of Shabbat.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם.
On page 46 and following, we find our Shabbat Amidah. I would invite you to again rise, if it is comfortable to do so, as we join together in prayer.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagiti latecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Agadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, L'man Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Atah Rab L'Hoshia, Morid Hatam, Mechakech Chaim Bechesed, Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umikayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Milchamocha Bal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzniach Yeshua, V'ne'emanata l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol.
Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, v'kadoshim b'chol yom yaluch haselah. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. The remaining blessings from this section of our service can be found in the prayer book through page 60, our evening prayer for peace. I invite you to continue with the traditional words of prayer, or to pray the silent prayers that can only come from each of our own hearts. And when you have finished your silent prayer this evening, if you are standing, I invite you to be seated. Mindy, would you join us as we continue with our prayer for peace, found on page 61.
Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blessed our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamarei et Israel b'shalom.
Page 62.
Oseh shalom b'mromah, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, Ya'kol Yisrael. 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 Ya'aseh shalom, Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, Ya'kol Yisrael.
Mishaberach lecholim, our prayer for those who are ill and in need of healing, can be found in your prayer book on page 253. And at this time, we bring to mind those whom we are thinking of in need of our prayers for healing this evening. If you're comfortable sharing their names aloud, I invite you to do so at this time.
Chuck Whitley.
Carol Rose.
Chuck Whitley.
Nonprofit and Ukrainian refugees. John Paul Mahasi.
Seymour Hanow.
Marcia Slagle.
Lisa Steinfeld. Linda Scott.
Baruch atah Adonai Rofeh HaCholim. Blessed are you, God, who brings a measure of comfort to all who are ill. We continue on page 253.
Source of strength, who bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Be'eroch Imotenu, Mikor HaBeracha Be'arotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
You're sitting on the porch, or you're washing dishes, looking out the window, and you happen to see your neighbor's dog standing alone in your yard. Or, if you lived in a different time, you happen to look out the door of your hut, and you saw your neighbor's ox, or his donkey, or his sheep standing in your yard. What's your moral obligation according to Jewish tradition? We know this one, right? You have an obligation to return it. What if it's not his dog that's standing in your yard, but a couple of dogs? But man, there's a foot of snow on the ground, and you can't find your boots. What is your obligation? The same, right? Find your boots, exactly. What if it's not his dog, but a random t-shirt that has blown off the clothesline back when people used to hang their clothes up on a clothesline for them to dry? And it's hot outside, like California don't charge your electric vehicle hot outside. What's your obligation then? You have an obligation to return that shirt. This week's Torah portion, Ki Tetzeh, specifies you can't pretend you didn't see it. You can't ignore it. Not only do you have to restore your neighbor's property, regardless of value, big or small, but you have to safeguard it as if it were your own. You can't half measure your way to fulfillment of this commandment. You're commanded to go over and above, according to the Torah portion. Hashiv tishivein. You have to make sure it is returned in good keeping, quickly. You have to make sure it is done right. Not taking half measures, going above and beyond to do the right thing, is not only important to our sacred texts, but indeed to the stories of our people. There was once a king, we're told, who had a super long and splendid corridor in his castle. He was pretty proud of this hallway that stretched almost as far as the eye could see. It was full of the most beautiful marble you had ever seen. You could see the candlelight, you could see the sunlight glinting off of it. But eventually he became bored, even with that splendor, and realized he wanted to do something bigger and something better. He invited 2 artists to come, the best artists he could find in the kingdom, and he promised riches beyond their imagination to whomever could paint the most beautiful side of the hallway. Both artists thought they were up for the challenge. They decided to accept, and they started work the following morning. That first artist came with his tool belt. He was measuring the hallway. He was thinking, he was pondering, he was writing sketches on a sketch pad. And the second artist simply stood there, staring at the wall. Days passed by, and the first artist had come back and filled in his side of the hallway with the most beautiful sketches. You could see his creative vision coming to light. He started to set up the ladders and the scaffolding. And the second artist continued to stare at the wall. The first artist began to mix paints and hired a team of laborers who would come in and paint this beautiful mural. And the second artist continued to blink at the wall. As the time for the competition drew to a close, the first artist stood back, wiped the paint off of his brow to marvel at his amazing work with a big smile on his face. And the second artist stayed a little bit later into that evening. When they both came back to the palace the final morning, the king said, "I want to take this all in without you. I want to see what you have done." And so the king went in to take a look at this beautiful corridor. And on one side, he saw the most beautiful mural. And he turned to the other side and again saw the most beautiful mural. For the second artist had merely hung up a mirror for the king to see the first artist's work. "Well, I never would have thought it possible," the king said. "There is a tie. No matter which way I turn in my hallway, I see only the most beautiful mural. I would invite both artists back tomorrow to receive riches beyond their imagination." Now, as you can imagine, the first artist was apoplectic. He worked so hard on this mural. He measured, he sketched, he painted. Everything was perfect to his specifications. And the second artist just stood there smirking, realizing that he had outwitted the first artist. They returned to the castle the following morning. They saw a huge pile of gold coins sitting right in the middle of the hallway. And the king said to the first artist, "You've painted the most beautiful mural I've ever seen. These riches are for you." The second artist was confused. He said, "You said they were both the most beautiful sides of the hallway you had ever seen. Where are my riches?" The king said, "Look in the mirror." It's a story, it's a Torah portion that reminds us of a very valuable lesson. You have to put in the work to bring about the world that our tradition wants to see. You have to do the work to bring about the world in which we all want to live. Shabbat Shalom. I don't know if King Charles III will turn to me for decorating tips, but I've got a story for him. We turn back in our prayer books now, the bottom of page 282, words of Aleinu L'Shabeach. When you have found your page, I would invite you to rise as we join together in song and prayer, page 282.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'ateit gedula liyotzei bereshit, shelo asanu kagoyei haratzot, velo samanu kamishpechot hadama, shelo sam chokenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamon. אנחנו
Melech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. I would invite Irene forward to lead us on the prayer, page 291, and I invite everyone else to take their seats, page 291.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the way to remember.
As we prepare for words of Kaddish Yatom, our mourner's Kaddish, which can be found on page 294, we remember those who have gone before us. We observe the period of Shloshim for Alan Cobbett and Mary Lou Katz, and mark the yahrzeit to the commemoration of the passing of Gerald Barenbaum, Max Bleiberg, Pearl Cantor, Hilda Cantor, Molly Cohen, Frederick David Fried, Daniel Gordon, Matthew Heiss, Louis Hershenson, Naomi Schumacher Johnson, Minnie Katz, Bertha Kleinman, Erwin Levine, Esther Levinson, Mildred Leventhal, Helen V. Noble Lipsitz, Diane Lewick, Harry Lupovitz, Sadie Skirbel Miller, Francis L. Newman, Jeremy Daniel Pomerantz, J. I. Resnick, Abe Rosenthal, Robert Ross, Rose Ross, Susan Cohen Rothman, James Rothschild, Roy Ruchenberg, Philip Seltzer, Julia Grace Solomon, Leah Steinberg, Rita Jacobson Tyroller, and Edward Whitland. We hold each of them in our hearts, though I recognize there are others whom we remember this evening. If you have a loved one whose name we did not mention, or whose name I may have inadvertently mispronounced, I would invite you to share their name with the community. Yehei zichronam livracha. May the memory of all of our loved ones be for us an everlasting blessing. May their memories continue to shine in this world as those stars in the night sky. And together we affirm words of Kaddish Yatom, page 294. I would invite you to rise. Yit gadol v'yit kadash shemei rabbah. Be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei amaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Vit hadar, vit aleh, vit halal, shemei dechudsha barich hu, le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, huya say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru. Amen. You may be seated. A tremendous thank you to those members of terms who participated in our service this evening, who guided us in the Hebrew prayers of our tradition and the English readings. Thank you not only for your leadership of this service, but your leadership within the community, creating wonderful experiences, and just as importantly, creating opportunities to come together, to socialize, to combine the generations of Temple into the wonderful and sacred community we have. Thank you all. Thank you to you, Cantor, Rena, for leading us in song and in prayer, Leslie Hoffman for making all of the magic happen behind the scenes, and indeed everyone who has joined us in sacred virtual community and with us in the room, recognizing how wonderful it is to get to gather together this Shabbat before we head off to the dessert and cookies that I know Evelyn has been waiting for. We join together in Hine Mato. Those words, if you want to refresh your memory, can be found on page 10 in our Siddur.
And I'll apologize in advance, Rabbi Meyer. I've made a little bit of a shortened version of your beautiful Hine Mato because I really can't do all the modulations and those fancy chords that you always do in the middle. So, so this is my version, but I love it and I hope you don't mind. Hine Mato v'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Mato shevet achim gam yachad. How good, how pleasant dwelling together as one. Hinei mato u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei mato u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad, shevet achim gam yachad. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.